So you've been thinking about buying an Airbnb here in Sarasota, Venice, Bradenton, Lakewood Ranch, Siesta Key, any of the barrier islands, and you guys just don't know exactly where to get started. I brought on my co-list partner here, Joe, who has a wealth of knowledge in the Airbnb space, owns Airbnbs, managed Airbnbs, done everything for the last several years. He's going to be breaking down kind of the challenges with Airbnb right now in 2025 so that you guys can make an informed decision whether buying an Airbnb as an investment purchase is going to be the right fit for you, because a lot of people oftentimes just jump head first, and they don't know what's going to happen afterwards. So Joe is going to give you guys a little bit of some foresight for Airbnb properties. So Joe, obviously you want to talk to them a little bit about kind of your background in Airbnbs, kind of that space, and then we'll dive into maybe the challenges, the upsides of Airbnbs here in Sarasota.
Okay, yeah. Got into Airbnbs, and a lot of it was when a lot of people saw, people getting Airbnbs, Airbnbs doing great. And
now, is this during COVID, pre-COVID, after COVID?
During, into, after.
Okay.
So at that time, you could have put a tent in your backyard and it probably could have made $10,000 a month, no matter where you were in Florida. A lot of people came down. A lot of people bought Airbnbs. They did great. And then a lot of those people left, so the demand wasn't there. So it's just simple supply and demand, but the demand for Airbnbs weren't really there.
Yep.
Whether that's traveling nurses, doctors, things like that. So some challenges arose, I think, across the board for everybody. If you just had a regular house, those got to a point where they were hurting a little bit. You really need to stick out, be in a desirable area where, people are going to want to come year round. So whether that's a themed Airbnb, definitely have to put marketing behind it. Just throwing up your family member's house on Airbnb, like, even today's like not really cutting it.
Right. Well, it's just like the real estate market. If you're throwing up your house on the MLS, that's pretty much all you do. That's just like let's just say what a for sale by owner could do. Mm-hmm. If you put that in relation to an Airbnb owner or an Airbnb host, put it up on Airbnb and just let it sit, right? Obviously you want to do more than that in this market. It's just like the real estate market. The Airbnb market was super hot during COVID, and now it's pretty much cooled completely off.
Yep.
To where obviously Sarasota real estate has increased. It continues to increase year over year, even though I think we're down 7.5% year over year in median sales price. Mm-hmm. But still, cash flowing a lot of these single family houses in Sarasota is not really feasible.
Unless you have a very specific property.
Right. Which we'll get to is like island properties, or like properties that can fit multiple families in them that I've seen that rent very well, especially on Siesta Key. I mean, if they have a 5-8 bedroom, and it's like an 6 to 8 bedroom house, and they rent it out for like $1,000, $1,100 a night, where 3 families split it. It all makes sense.
Absolutely.
But like, let's just say your general 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,700 square foot Gulf Gate house. Like, that doesn't Airbnb. Like, say you bought it for $575. Would that even Airbnb? Like, it would Airbnb, but it would not make sense financially.
You would have to be very strategic about it.
Right.
And it would depend on your financial goals with it.
Right. I mean, and the reason I brought it up was because I sold one in Gulf Gate. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath. I think it was like 1,700 square feet. It grossed $40K a year.
Okay.
Which obviously, as you know, after taxes, insurance, management, all that, you're left.
Well, not even that, the cleaners.
The cleaners are what take you to the cleaners.
That's probably the one thing I realized, and a lot of property owners that I've hosted for have realized.
Yeah.
That these cleaners are the people that
make the money.
Make the money, and it makes sense because they don't have any upfront costs. But,
right.
If you're talking to even 150 on the low end, hard to find.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
to 200, 250 to 400, upwards of 500, depending how big the house is. People don't take that into calculations when they're running their projections a lot, and they don't realize if you're turning over the house every couple days, those cleaners at 300, 300, 300, 300. At the end of the month, you're like, oh, I gross 10, but cleaners did, 10 cleanings. Well, that's
3,000.
3,000. Then you have your mortgage or insurance, which is a big deal.
Supplies.
So, and now we have seasonality back in Florida.
Yeah. Which
That
we
we haven't had when all the Airbnbs were really booming.
We haven't had seasonality for the last couple years. Now I think this year is when we'll really see the turn.
Yep.
So it's kind of interesting to see the influx or the change that happens with this now.
Yeah. It's definitely back. It's definitely back in the vacation market because you can almost see, even on the calendars I manage, is about May.
Yep.
April, May starts slowing down, and then there's just a drop.
Where June, July, August?
Yeah. There's just almost a drop where it's like, what just happened? You just went from back-to-back bookings. The house doesn't have a day empty to just dropped.
Right.
And I'm having that same conversation with tons of other hosts that, host way more homes than I do, and they're all experiencing that.
Right. And I think this is a perfect time to say, like, obviously, when you guys are looking at buying a property, obviously you want to work with someone like Joe, who actually knows what the Airbnb market is like, the back end financials of Airbnbs, what to look for that most agents don't look for, some of the foresight he can give you guys into what maybe this property would be good for in terms of, all right, here's the best and highest and best use for this property. And it may not be Airbnb. Obviously, Joe doesn't really care about just selling you every home that you see. It's mainly along the lines of, all right, figure out a property that's going to cash flow and make financial sense so that you don't become upside down and you turn around a year later and like, Joe, I need to sell this property because it's not making me any money. And then next thing you know, you're upside down on your mortgage.
Yeah. And well, I tell people if their whole reason to buy a property is just to have an Airbnb,
Right.
That's probably bad, because if that's your only exit strategy,
Yep.
You want to really try to make sure it breaks even as a long-term rental, which in Florida right now is tough in general because of rates and insurance. But you don't want to just be relying on Airbnb, because anything can happen there. You could have a situation, something happens to the house, or something happens with Airbnb, like things you can't control, and all of a sudden, this house is now sitting empty.
Right.
So you want multiple, avenues and strategies,
Right.
and some, like we both have clients that, purchase properties just for, tax reasons, so
1031s.
yeah, to some people, having a net positive cash flow of an Airbnb isn't, they don't care, they don't want to lose a bunch on it, but if they can break even, that can be beneficial. So, people have Airbnbs for multiple reasons, but you just want to make sure the numbers pencil out, because what you see on some sites, I won't name any, but they'll throw out projected numbers, but that doesn't take into account cleaning fees.
Right.
What the platforms take.
Or this property makes $150,000 a year. That's it. That's
Right. And some people are like, oh, I'll make 150 and I'll spend 50 on the mortgage, so I clear 100. Like, no, that's not how the math breaks down at all.
Right.
Something like that you honestly might break even on.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the property, but like, what in Sarasota would you see as a decent or expected return ROI wise on an Airbnb property in Sarasota?
Sarasota is
Tricky.
It's a tricky market because of the ordinances they have.
Yes.
Should we get into that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can talk about that in terms of the ordinances, obviously city of Sarasota, county, but then you also have the barrier islands, which is another different animal. But yeah, we can definitely jump into that in terms of, okay, where specifically are Airbnbs good?
Okay.
Where are they viable?
Yep. If you're on the barrier islands like Anna Maria Island, Siesta, they do great out there.
Yep.
These are places you can have Airbnbs that will gross over $200,000 a year. And there's places like West Bradenton, great pocket, and their ordinances are not the same as Sarasota County. So they do great there. And, Sarasota does do good because Sarasota is a place where a lot of people come. And that's what you want in an Airbnb.
Right.
Hotspots where people go to. So whether it's, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or Aspen or wherever, Sarasota's a pocket of Florida people come to. So Airbnbs will thrive. What we're dealing with and seeing now in Florida as a whole is the seasonality coming back. You know, because for the last 3 years, summertime, wintertime didn't matter. There weren't really snowbirds. People were just always in Florida. Well, that's not the case anymore. So people have to account for, oh, well, it will do really good between, you know, say October and April. But now we're back in the seasonality of, well, you know, from April to, you know, next coming into busy season could be empty.
Right. That's so, yeah, you have to deal with the seasonality, meaning that you have to make sure that you get all your bookings during in season that'll cover you and take you through.
And not only that, you have to maximize in season.
Right.
You know, it's not a matter of, oh, I have a booked up calendar, because I see that mistake too, where people will post, oh, look how good mine's doing.
Yep.
And their calendar's full, but it's full with 15 different reservations. Like,
Right. So there's a lot of turnovers.
there's a lot of turnovers.
Yep.
So your cleaning fees are nuts. Like, it works out better if you have less reservations, but you're capitalizing on those reservations, and you have a 50-60% occupancy.
Right.
Rather than 100% occupancy, but you have 15 turnovers.
Right.
You'll
15
drive
cleaning fees.
yourself nuts. Your
Right.
cleaners will love you, but
They definitely will, and they'll make more than you.
yeah.
So besides that, what other challenges are you seeing right now in this Airbnb market, like in 2025, compared to during COVID? You know, obviously hotels are getting a lot more competitive, which means like islands like Siesta Key, those guys are still doing very well Airbnb wise, but like, let's just talk inland Sarasota. Like, obviously a lot of people are competing with hotels because rates are a little bit more affordable, not dealing with Airbnb headaches. And obviously some people don't trust Airbnb because of like the whole camera situation that goes on with some people's residences. But like, what other challenges do you see potential Airbnb owners having in 2025? Is it the numbers just don't make sense because real estate prices increase? Is it the property style? What is the challenge that Airbnb owners are facing?
Property style and obviously restrictions.
Yep.
Right? You have to think Airbnb, so hotels, all the big chains, like they're throwing so much money behind, you know, getting rid of Airbnbs because it's competition on them. So you're always going to have ongoing lawsuits. And, you know, hosts and Airbnb itself, how do you go up against Marriott?
Right.
You know, so there's always that. You know, the restrictions do not seem to be getting better for hosts and owners.
Yep.
They're just always more restrictive. So there's always going to be that competition of Airbnbs. Like I said, you can't just do a 3-2 house, throw up some pop art and be like, cool, you know, and expect it to book. I mean, there's funds out there now that will take a house like this, which is an amazing house, but they'll throw $100,000 to $200,000 into it just to make it a experience.
Almost like a content house.
Yeah.
Like what you see on social media.
Right, like an experience. So you see a lot of these around Disney.
Yep.
Where it's a 15-bedroom house or not even, but they have, you know, bedrooms with water slides in it, and all this, and you're like, what is this? It's a whole experience, right? A lot more of those are popping up.
Yep.
And honestly, when you break down the numbers, especially when you're, you know, bringing a family, that's another mistake. They don't cater the Airbnbs to kids, which is a big part of who books Airbnbs.
Right.
Because they don't have to get a room for, you know, the kids, you know, the cousins, all this.
Right.
They want all in one house where the kids are going to be entertained. So I see a lot of houses where it could be a beautiful house, but they don't really have things for the kids to do.
Yep.
And that's a mistake because people just pass it by. Whether it's a foosball table, air hockey table, pinball machine, you know, Connect 4 out back.
Right.
You need something where, you know, if parents are looking to book your house, they're like, oh, the kids are going to be occupied. They have something to do.
Right.
I would say that's actually a big mistake too.
That is, that they're not catering to the right clientele. Because obviously people that come down here vacation, they're bringing kids. Because the beach, Siesta Key.
And that's a big reason why they want an Airbnb over multiple hotel rooms.
Right.
Because if they have to get 2 or 3 hotel rooms, in busy season, you're talking 300, 400, 500 per room per night.
Yep.
You can get a really nice Airbnb for less than that, caters to everything.
Yep.
You have a kitchen.
You have a whole house, basically one room at like say the Westin is $600 a night, $500 during in season, $400 off season.
Right.
and you're still near downtown. Now you're not in the heart of downtown, but you're near downtown. So I think that's obviously some headaches that a lot of people come into. They're like, I'll just go buy a property, I'll Airbnb it when I'm gone. And they think I'll just cover my mortgage, or like I'll just cash flow this and so forth. And there's a lot more than just saying I'm just going to cash flow, or I'm just going to cover my mortgage, because you got cleaners, you got supplies, you got all this kind of stuff.
It's a full-time job that you can't turn off.
Right.
So you can hire a property management company, which if you're a busy person, I would recommend, because people don't realize it's a full-time, you can't turn it off.
Yep.
So you could be on your anniversary on a Friday night. Your phone beeps at 9 p.m. and it's a guest and something's going wrong with the plumbing or the power.
Right.
You can't just get to it the next day.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do it right then and there.
Right.
So it really is, and I've had it happen. I've had my phone beep where I had to do stuff at 1 in the morning, 9 p.m. So you just have to always be on top of it or put somebody in place.
Right.
Because it is a very
time intensive
yes
process. Yeah.
Yep.
So what would you say, some advice for people that are looking at buying Airbnbs in Sarasota? What would you tell them? You know, say you were their agent looking at an Airbnb property here, like what would you tell them as advice in terms of what to be aware of if they were looking?
I would say definitely try to make sure you're in the city where the restrictions are a little more lax.
Yep.
Run your numbers, which I can go over numbers with everybody.
Right. Realistic numbers.
Realize it's an ongoing project. It's not about, oh, here's a cool Airbnb and you're done with it.
Yep.
There's always something. Even if you're an owner who brings in a management company, brings in a host, the truth is there's always going to be something. Because if electric or plumbing or something goes out, even if you have a management company in there, you're still going to have to deal with it one way or another.
Right.
So it's a bunch of stuff. And unfortunately, like some guests, I haven't had any like really bad guests to deal with, but I do see it with some of my other friends.